Gerry, it's been a while since we've seen each other's faces. Let's dive right in at Sports QuaranTV. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Sports QuaranTV. I feel like it's been forever, but we're here. Chris Dobson, Gerry Green coming at you online and in your living room. Gerry, we have got a great show because it's been so long. We've got a lot to talk about. Before we dive into the show, though, I do want to talk about the World Junior Hockey Championships. I know that it finished a while ago now here on the East Coast, but I figured it just makes sense because you and I both had an opportunity to be in the building a little bit here in Moncton. I want to get your thoughts and opinions on it before we move on. How'd you find the event went? Did you have a good time? What was it like to be back in the Avenir Center?
Well, even though it's a couple of weeks ago, Chris, I think the lasting effects of the event will go on for a long while. And it made you feel proud as a Maritimer, the response, not only in both cities, but the way we appeared on national television and the enthusiasm and the friendliness that Maritimers have and all that sort of thing, the hospitality that Maritimers have, and how anybody that was covering the event on a national scope, specifically TSN, talked about how knowledgeable the fans were and how polite they were and cheered on underdogs and things like that. That made you feel real good. And Hockey Canada's got to consider themselves very lucky that they got to come to the Maritimes at this particular time in their history to have these two cities host this event and how well it went and how well it looked on national TV.
I fully agree. Seeing exactly, I don't think you could have picked a better location, obviously, with, the bad press Hockey Canada had gotten this year, coming to the Maritimes, choosing Heave Away as your goal song in Halifax while you're doing it. Watch the fans love it. But outside of the Canada aspect of it, I just want to take a second because I want to say and show the appreciation because everybody we've talked to around the city of Moncton, even though Canada wasn't playing in Moncton, was so well represented. And, the fact that you had Jonas Tybell and Miles Mueller, the Moncton Wildcats, playing for the Swiss. Every time the Swiss games were playing, the arena was packed. The fans were loud. The Latvian fans were loud. Like I saw, Jesse from Bar Down on TSN, he was sharing all social media behind the scenes of the Wildcats locker room or the Team USA locker room, the organ, just the praise and like the love our city had received. I couldn't be a prouder Monctonian, and of course an Atlantic Canadian. It was so great to see on the national scale. Overall, great tournament. I don't think it'll be 20 years before we see anything like that back here again. Overall, really well done. I have to tip my cap to the IIHF and exactly how they put this whole thing on, and tip my cap to both venues. Both venues were amazing. Way to go. I hope we get to see it again. That being said, Gerry, let's stick with junior hockey, though, because we want to talk about the QMJHL. The trade deadline's come and gone. The real season starts now. But in the Maritimes, you look at the top five. I mean, it's going to be a good race to the end here.
Here you have, Chris, Quebec, Sherbrooke, Victoriaville, which came out of nowhere for me, but I can see why. They do have a good team and good reason to add a few pieces down the stretch. You have Gatineau and Sherbrooke and Halifax. I think I got all five of them in. There is definitely a 5-team level or echelon, if you will, besides the other 13 teams that are in the league. These five are definitely a cut above the rest. And I think each one of them did whatever they could to make their team better. And specifically, I liked what Halifax did, and I hope Halifax gets into the mix. They currently sit second overall behind the Quebec Rampart, and they added Alexander Doucette from Val-d'Or and Josh Lawrence. And Josh Lawrence has lit it up since arriving in Halifax from Blainville. That's where he got sent after the Memorial Cup Championship in St. John, and now he's in the Maritimes again and being a key part of that. They've added some key offense. They do have the defense, Chris, and I think Matthias Russo, who is their starting goaltender, can carry the load, and hopefully Halifax can do that. But I thought that was a huge impact on the trade deadline, was acquiring those two players for Halifax.
Oh, without a question. You talked about Russo, and the question mark everybody seemed to had was, yes, Halifax had the team with a couple assets. Could they acquire? Could they compete? They've cleared that they could. Goaltending was the question mark, but looks like they've addressed that. In fact, as far as teams go, you're right. Halifax right now is on a 9-0-1 run in their last 10, which is phenomenal to see. The Josh Lawrence acquisition to me, and they pulled that move off early. It was early in the trade period.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't take him long to get down there and suit up and play in a game for Halifax. And you're right, he's absolutely torn the rubber off the puck since he got there. It's been great. Overall, I see Halifax, Quebec as the 1-2. But on the flip side of things, Gatineau's 8-1-1 in their last 10. Sherbrooke, I think, is 7-2-1 in their last 10. Like, you look at these teams who are winning. Now, on the flip side, staying in the Maritimes just a little bit, and I'll say in my own backyard here, the Wildcats, even though they're coming off of two consecutive losses, they played real good games here. They had the Remparts in town, played them really tough. But overall, it looks like the goaltender Steinman, the rookie goaltender, he's been the guy. He's played well. He had one tough outing, but right now, I think as a rookie, he's still posting like a .903 save percentage, I believe. But for what he's trying to do, because the question mark was going to be Steinman or Fillion, or are they going to split 1-2 the entire way down the road? So, I mean, right now, the goal of Moncton will make it into the postseason, maybe surprise a couple people. But if you look at a guy like Etienne Morin for the Moncton Wildcats, who's been phenomenal, I'll be really curious. But like I said, I love Halifax and the Maritimes. And anytime the Maritimes are representing in the QMJHL, I'm on board. I'm on board. I love it.
Yeah, but Chris, let's say you're one of those fans that doesn't like Halifax, okay? But you do have some Maritime connections with the other teams that could maybe, sway you towards them in regards to Riley Kidney and along with Cam McDonald. Both of those two went to Gatineau. And if you have a Charlottetown warmth for Francisco Lapena, he went to Gatineau too. So they've added some key guys up front and put a guy in the net. Take a look at Sherbrooke. They added Jacob Melanson and Marc-Andre Gaudette. Marc-Andre Gaudette, you don't get to talk about him much, Chris. He's from St. Ignace, New Brunswick. Played for Bathurst last year. Remember, got traded to Chicoutimi. Chicoutimi then traded to Sherbrooke. He's a high echelon defenseman. He's taken in the 5th round by the St. Louis Blues. There's another team you might want to watch in the Sherbrooke. And Joshua Waugh I've warmed to him since the World Juniors, I think more specifically, because he really wasn't a guy that I thought had character because of the way things happened in St. John. I thought this kid's not my type of kid. But now that I've seen him at a higher level and as a leader for Team Canada, I've kind of warmed up to him. And number 2, Chris, in regards to the Moncton Wildcats, they're number 3 or number 4 in regards to the way I spout out stuff. The Shawinigan Cataracts last year, there was a top 4 last year of teams that you thought were going to win the President's Cup. The Shawinigan Cataracts finished 7th overall and surprised and won the championship and went to the Memorial Cup, of which was eventually won by the St. John Sea Dogs. So even though the Moncton Wildcats sit at 8th, and I think they have a good team chemistry and they've added some key pieces, watch out for those underdogs that come from behind and surprise the top 5.
Those who come to work with their boots on, ready to play the game, you look, man, they can surprise you. And if you get hot goaltending when the moment's right, anybody can steal a series from you. So either way, I'm excited for the second half of the year. I'll be curious to see how this whole thing plays out. But overall, it's been a fun season to watch. And I'll be watching Halifax real close. Let's move on, Jerry. Let's go to the National Hockey League because there's a lot of crazy storylines coming out of the NHL right now. And we're going to start with the Boston Bruins and how good they truly are right now, which is I'm not going to say it was a shock because they have the talent. They've got the grit. They've got everything. They're getting the goaltending. But are you surprised to see how things are going there?
New coach, new attitude, more or less. The top 6 always seems to change. But the thing that they don't talk about that much is that David Krejci wasn't there last year, Chris. He's back again. And I'm not sure why he wasn't there last year, but I think it was noticeable that he wasn't. But you watch, if you ever get a chance to watch them, Chris, I know you're a Montreal fan, and Montreal fans hate to watch Boston. Boston fans hate to watch Montreal and don't care either way about either one of them. They move the puck, and they move the puck very smartly. And here they've gone from Tuukka Rask to add a couple of goaltenders in Ullmark and another. I don't even know the second guy's name, but they're a good tandem. And they've blended in seamlessly, and there's playing great defense. They've got a good core back there. They've got the leadership up front. And here they was, Chris. I think it took 20 games on home ice before they lost one in regulation. And surprisingly enough, another team they want to talk about here tonight is the Seattle Kraken, who came in and have only team that have handed Boston a regulation loss on home ice, because the Kraken went through Canada, and then down the Eastern Seaboard on a 7-game road trip and won all 7 games. It's been
NHL
impressive
record.
what
NHL
Ron Francis has done with that team that really has no names on it. It's been very exciting. They've surprised me in the West, and I'm still concerned about Colorado. I don't know if they can turn it on. They're out of a playoff spot right now, a wild card. I suppose they can, and I'm still concerned about what Edmonton does with the power that they have. Fortunately for Edmonton, Evander Kane came back the other night, and I think that's going to give them a real shot in the arm. But the Kraken have been by far, along with the New Jersey Devils, the biggest surprises this year for me.
Not even a question. I fully agree on the Seattle Kraken side. Talking about the Oilers, and I'm glad you brought that up, and then Colorado, I'm going to touch on both. And that was, with Evander Kane coming on in, because there was a lot of question marks surrounding the Oilers and what was going to happen because there was some concern. I think the Oilers are going to be just fine. But on the flip side of things, the Colorado Avalanche, the injury bug they've battled the entire way has been something that's kind of been hindering that team. Look, yes, they are out of a wild card spot now. Barely. They're not out by much, and it's just a matter of time. There's still 40 games left in the National Hockey League. Everything is going to be fine. I do want to bring this up, seeing how we're still on the western side of the league here, and that is, I have a bit of a beef right now, and I know it's not on our sheet here, Jerry, and I want to talk about it, and that is with Sutter and the Calgary Flames, and that is, I hate what they're doing to Jacob Peltier currently. They called him up for this road trip. They've had him, I think they called him up 7 or 11 days now. Has yet to get into the lineup. And he has the nerve to say, and I quote during a press conference, the game is about speed. The game has changed. You're not going to get these slow big guys doing everything they're doing. Meanwhile, you've got Milan Lucic on your second line being a pylon, like a full-blown pylon. And then you've got this going on. Jacob Peltier sitting and waiting, told all his family, got called up from the Wranglers. He's having a great season with the Wranglers, by the way, this year, which is why he got another great, right. Almost, I think he's close. He's very top of the scoring in the AHL right now as well. So they call him up to get this experience, and his knock is that he's small, but the game's changed at his speed. Meanwhile, Peltier's still up in the booth. I have an issue with that. Sutter, I get it. You're old school, and I love that about you, but at the same time, you're right. The game's changed. Figure it out. Get Peltier in a damn game and make this thing happen for Flames fans all across the country. Okay, that was my gripe.
What hasn't changed, Chris, is what dilemma Toronto might be coming into in the Eastern Division, specifically. Right now, they're 11 points back of Boston, which they're up on Tampa Bay. It's going to be the same thing again. They're going to have to beat Tampa Bay or Boston to get into the next round of the playoffs. It's not going to be Boston. It's going to be Tampa Bay, clearly. And Tampa Bay still has that pedigree and that goaltending and that experience and that confidence that it's going to be another tough task for Toronto to try to get by the first round, no matter what they do, as they say, no matter what they do in the regular season.
So the only question mark, you're right, is, and it's going to flip-flop between now and the end of the year. You're right. They're going to be playing the Tampa Bay Lightning. The question is, will they be playing it in Toronto, or will they have home? Or
don't matter. It doesn't matter.
The only thing that I'll say saving grace for the Leafs right now is, again, I don't think you want to catch Boston. I think you want Boston to win, because every year for the last couple of years, Toronto keeps going in as the number 1 seed and somehow gets upset. By first year was the Canadiens, then it was the Lightning. These are the matchups. They're the front and center. Now, as long as the Leafs are in the playoffs, they're going to garner media attention. That's what it's going to be. And of course, first round stuff. But as far as this first round hiccups go, I don't know. Either way, you're right. They're going to play the Lightning. We'll see how it plays out.
One other thing, Chris, in the NHL, if you get a chance, and the Jets seem to be on TV a little bit more, the effects of what, they didn't do much during the offseason except add Rick Bowness. And Rick Bowness has done, I don't know what, in the dressing room and changed the mentality of this whole team. And you've got a guy, and another fellow you should watch that doesn't get much coverage is Jack Morrissey. Or Josh Morrissey, rather. They call him, I was thinking of Jack Norris. They're calling him Norrisy because of the way he's played so far this season. They're a real fun team to watch, not just the fact that they're the team I love, but if you get a chance to catch an eye and watch them. I watched them last night against Montreal. I turned it off halfway through. But nonetheless, if you get a chance to watch them, they're a team that's leading the Western Conference, and for good reason. They're playing good hockey.
Look, the Jets are playing great hockey right now. In fact, actually, I tuned in last night because I obviously have been watching a lot of Habs games, and I've tuned in quite a bit. I was expecting a blowout again, although Montembeault from Montreal has played very good the last 3 games. Watching what the Jets are doing, I was really cool to see the moment I saw where Mama and Papa Barron flew into Montreal from Halifax,
right?
Because the Barron brothers played against each other last night. Justin being first star of the game had 2 assists last night. But overall, I thought that was really cool. That was a cool storyline. But you are right. The Jets are fun this year. And I can't wait for the playoffs. And as being a Jets fan, I love seeing the whiteout in Winnipeg. I love every time that stuff happens. And it's going to be a fun. I hope they can sustain it. Overall, like I said, I think it's great. We've got to move on because we want to talk about the NFL. Wildcard weekend came and went. And for the most part, there were some wild pieces to it. But before we get into that and break it down, there's one story we got to talk about, and that is, of course, every other media outlet's talking about it. Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, will they play again? Have they played their last game? Jerry, what do you think at this point? I think Brady played his last game in Tampa. That I do think.
Well, I was terribly disappointed with the way Tampa played against the Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys, I think, favored going into that one because look at the Tampa Bay was under 500 during the regular season. How could they be a favorite even though they were playing at home field? And the only reason they got home field is because they won their division with a less than 500 record. So they played subpar football all season long. Brady's mind didn't look like he was in it. He wasn't physically in it. The defense had, tremendous holes like what they say called Swiss cheese, the way that Dallas moved the ball, not only running it, but passing it. I just don't think with his personal life and now into the off season, is Brady going to be motivated enough to come back for another season? And would he do it with another team? Jumpins, Chris, he'll be 46 years old. And I just don't know if he still has it in it, even though, he's a fellow that I think physically and mentally can do it if anybody could.
First of all, Tom Brady's going to need money because he just lost it all in a crypto scam. Second of all, I think going to Vegas, which is what everybody's got him linked to, being a Raider, that's how it's all going to play out. No one would be a better he'd be the new Celine Dion of Las Vegas, is all I'm going to say. It just makes sense. On the flip side, Aaron Rodgers isn't done. He's going to play football again. He made it very clear on the Pat McAfee show that if there is a rebuild, he will not be a part of it. He wishes everyone the best. I do think he'll play again. The question is where. Either way, let's talk about Wildcard Weekend quickly because I want to get it in. What did you think of the games? Was there anything that really stood out to you? Something that shocked you? I mean, that Jacksonville game was probably one of the craziest football games I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, and San Diego had to consider themselves lucky. Turnovers, you cannot predict. And the amount of turnovers that Trevor Lawrence handed
four in the first half?
Right, 4 interceptions and a fumble, I thought. I can't remember. 4 turnovers in general. But the 2 teams that concern me that have made it to the next round, Chris, I'm excited for Jacksonville, full marks. I'm a little concerned with the way the Bengals won. And I'm a little concerned the way the Bills won. I know now the Bills have had a lot of things happen to themselves in the last few weeks. And I think they might have felt a little bit of pressure to make sure they won that game for their injured teammate, who has recovered, and thank goodness for that.
I think he was at the game.
He stayed home. Eventually, he did decide to stay home, but I think he might be at the next one, which happens to be against the Bengals. I thought the Bengals backed their way in. They were very fortunate to have the Ravens' third-string quarterback try to jump over the line and had the ball knocked out of his hands. It goes the other way. But I wasn't impressed with the Bengals at all during the second half. And for a team that won their division, I was a little shocked at the way they did when they did win. And that's all they say, just win, baby. And same with the Bills, just win, baby, and get on to the next round. And that's what they did. So the 2 of them playing each other this weekend will be fun. And we'll see exactly what either team is made of. But, of course, the Bengals have to go on the road to do that.
Okay, Jacksonville, Kansas City. Any chance Jacksonville upsets the Chiefs?
There is no way that happens. Absolutely not. I see Kansas City sitting, and Kansas City at home especially. They have been beaten at home. The Bengals did it, to go to the Super Bowl. But I just don't think Jacksonville's seasoned enough yet. I'm excited that they did get to the next round after having the season they had before that. And so that'll be fun to watch. I do certainly also impressed what the Giants did with the Vikings, and could they surprise the Eagles? I think they could, Chris. I really do. I think they could.
I do too. I mean, Daniel Jones coming off what looked to be a career playoff game last week, looked unbelievable, was able to stay on his feet, was rushing well. Probably the best performance I've seen Daniel Jones perform since he's been a quarterback in the NFL. I agree with you. Saquon Barkley was rolling. To see the Giants, I think the Giants, although it's going to be tough because that game's in Philly and the fans are wild, but at the same time, I do think it's a good matchup for them. But I agree with you. I think the Giants could upset the Eagles. We got to talk about Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys heading into San Francisco. It's one of those things for me where, look, I'm not really sure who to root for. I like the Niners, but I like the storyline. If the Cowboys are playing good football, I don't know, man. Where's your head at here?
No, definitely San Francisco. I think San Francisco is the team to beat in that conference. It's going to be either Kansas City or Kansas City or who am I thinking of? The Bills coming out of the other conference. But, I just think San Francisco's strong enough, and I think they're going to put Dallas in their space. You're not going to be playing Jacksonville here now when you go to San Francisco, Dallas. So just be prepared. They're high as a kite now that they won a game. Thank goodness for that.
I agree. So at this point, I think we're in the general consensus here of saying in the preview for this weekend, you and I are both going to ride with the Kansas City Chiefs over Jacksonville. I think we're both agreeing we're rooting for a Giants win. I think the Bills beat the Bengals, and I think we're both looking at San Francisco upsetting the Dallas Cowboys and watching Cowboys fans mourn again. I think we're all aligned here. Sound good to you?
Perfect.
Well, Jerry, it's that time. It feels like it went by so fast. Let's close this thing out. It is time for the wrap. We're going to start where we always do because it's been a while since I've heard you tell me about it. Give me an update. What's going on in the MHL?
Yeah, the MHL Junior A hockey around the Maritimes has been thriving, and the competition is very good, especially in the Northern Division, Chris, where there's 4 teams that are going to battle it out for first place. We're talking about Edmonton, we talk about Campbellton, Miramichi, and the Summerside Western Capitals always seem to be in the middle of things. And in the Northern Division, they're a high-scoring division, Chris. Conversely, in the Southern Division, Yarmouth, who leads the league overall with 49 points, is stingy defensively along with the Truro Bearcats. Interesting, the games of the week this week have offense against defense as Summerside and Edmonton go into Truro to play on Friday and Saturday night. Those will be 2 interesting results that we'll have for you next week. But if things are happening in a high speed in the Northern Division of the Maritime Hockey League. The world of soccer, Chris, has some major news this week. What was it?
Well, we're going to take it back just a couple seconds because the Saudis are making some big noise. Of course, after the World Cup, superstar who was benched during the World Cup, Cristiano Ronaldo, making headlines of signing a $200+ million deal for 2 years with Al Nassr and the Saudi Arabian side of things. But that was a couple weeks ago. What we found out last night was, so there is something called the Beyond Imagination VIP ticket, which is an event the Saudis are putting on, which is an exhibition, which will have Ronaldo playing against Messi in front of all the fans. Well, this ticket was sold as a VIP ticket, gives you a meet and greet, allows you to do all these crazy things. That ticket went last night for $2.6 million,
yes,
which
sir.
just goes to show how much money people are willing to spend to see 2 of the greatest football players in the history of the game go head-to-head in an exhibition. Look, say what you will about it, but the Saudis are making a big splash in the world. First it was the Live Tour, now they're taking over, soccer. You never know. Maybe wrestling's next. Stay tuned, I guess. But either way, cool story to see nonetheless. I love seeing stuff like that. There should be a fun exhibition match. All right, we saw the MHL. Let's go to the AUS. What's happening in university hockey?
Well, university hockey takes a big break for Christmas, Chris, and now they're a couple weeks back at it. And as usual, you see the UMB Reds on top of the men's university hockey. And you remember way back, Chris, when we started covering AUS in this show, hockey that is, the Reds had lost their first 2 games and how everybody thought that was so absurd. Well, they haven't lost much since. They're 17-3, 1-1. Sit on top of the standings, followed by UPEI, which is a surprise, at 14-6, 1-1. Moncton sits 5th at 10-11-1, but they've lost 7 in a row. They got off to a great start, but have stumbled before Christmas and now after Christmas. Games of the week this week to watch: UMB and UDM are both in St. Mary's and Acadia this weekend. And women's university hockey, UMB ladies are on top, 17-1 1, Chris. A game to watch this week. UMB and Moncton square off on Saturday night at 7 o'clock. A CFLer seems like he's going to make it in the NFL, Chris. Explain.
I absolutely love this story when I read it. So Nathan York of the BC Lions, you know, he was trying to figure out what his plan was going to be. He spoke to 12 teams, I believe, in the NFL, deciding after working out, looking at what he was going to do. You know, had a great season, finished the year with BC, I believe, was 25 touchdowns, 3,300 passing yards this year. You know, 24-year-old Victorian native has decided that he is going to compete to back up Trevor Lawrence with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Interesting strategy, I think, at this point. It must be a learning piece for him because he's certainly not going to get a whole lot of playing time. Knock on wood, heaven forbid something happens to Trevor Lawrence. But overall, it's cool to see the Canadians come down, have some success in the CFL. Again, congratulations goes out to Nathan York, but looks like he will be backing up Trevor Lawrence with the Jacksonville Jaguars. So we're going to close this thing out, still sticking with hockey on your end, Jerry. You're going to go the NBPEI U18. You know, you wanted to talk about this. We wanted to slide this into the wrap. What's happened?
Well, yes, you know I love hockey, Chris, and I always used to call this Major Midget. That shows my age a little bit, but now it's called U18. An interesting story about this, Chris, is usually you see the Moncton Flyers, who are, of course, the TELUS Cup defending champions, on top of the standings, but not this year, and that's the way it can go sometimes. It's the Charlottetown Knights who sit on top at 18-5, 1-2, followed by the Flyers, the Capitals, and the Vitos in your top three. And also the interesting news came out this week. Flyers beat the Knights last weekend to capture the East Coast Ice Jam, which is a major tournament for the U18s. He did that in Halifax. Games to see this week. Fredericton Capitals are in Moncton, and that's at Sunday at 1:30 at the Superior Propane Center. That's the game of the week in U18. Third time's a charm, Chris, in baseball free agency. Explain, please.
Carlos Correa. First you thought it was going to be the Mets, then it was San Francisco. Turns out during his press conference decided Minnesota's where he wanted to stay all along. Lost out on 13 years, $350 million contract, and 12-year, $315 million contract after failing physicals with both the Giants and the Mets. Correa is staying in Minnesota on a 6-year, $200 million deal to stay with the I don't know. Look, at the end of the day, I'm going to try to keep my opinions to myself. I don't know if this was legit. Maybe something was really wrong. To me, it's guys like him who ruined the game. But that's just my opinion. Just my opinion. Don't shoot the messenger. But either way, staying with Minnesota 6 years, $200 million. Nice payday for 6 years, my friend. That's all I'll say about that. Jerry, let's close this thing off. It's been great to see you, man. I know it's been a while. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we're going to see you next Thursday.